Hello everyone and welcome back to Newegg TV. Today we have a very special video and a very special guest. This is JJ from ASUS. How are you doing, JJ?
I'm doing all right. Thank you for asking me, sir.
Fantastic. Today we have an ROG series motherboard we're going to talk about. To start off with the basics, Z97 chipset, 1150 socket, compatibility with Intel current 4th generation core processors, aka Haswell, as well as Haswell Refresh CPUs, which are coming out now as well as potentially in the future. This is fully compatible with these Devil's Canyon series of CPUs from Intel. Mm-hmm. So this is a micro ATX motherboard, and the Gene, when it comes to, this is a Maximus 7 Gene, by the way, and the Gene series has come a long way since it was first introduced.
It has. I mean, if we go all the way back to when the boards originally kicked off to what we have now, there's been definitely a huge amount of evolution in terms of the functions and the features. But I think even if we go back to that era of the first Gene series motherboards, they really hit the marker of setting a trend in terms of that not compromising on the experience that you could have on a small form factor board. Because keep in mind, of course, these were the boards that really set the precedence of having a board that had extraordinary quality, high overclocking capability, and really rich enthusiast class features, even though it wasn't in the traditional ATX form factor. And it's really been from those boards that, of course, that evolved even into the further refinement that you've seen within the micro ATX renaissance that we've done, not only in our mainstream division, but of course with boards like our Impact series under the ROG line.
So I got to put you on the spot real quick, JJ. Mm-hmm. If you're building a smaller form factor machine, yourself personally, micro ATX or mini ITX?
For me personally, I'm going to go micro ATX.
Okay.
I love mini ITX, but I think mini ITX for me personally, I love most when I actually don't have to use a discrete GPU.
Okay.
That's just my personal preference. I find that most of the time when I'm going to build a small form factor rig, I'm going to go to a certain size anyways because I'm going to be putting in a discrete GPU to be able to get that best performance out of it. And I usually want a little bit more flexibility in some of the items that I'm adding on board anyways. So I like having a couple of those extra PCIe slots.
Definitely, and I would tend to agree with you. I lean towards micro ATX. The expansion slots that are available combined with the smaller form factor size, and there's tons of micro ATX cases out there that can accommodate this type of thing and still keep a very small footprint.
Exactly, and I think that's the big thing, is I don't feel like I'm losing too much, but I think that when you really want to maximize mini ATX, if you really want to go really small, then you really kind of want to do that without necessarily adding in a discrete GPU. I mean, you can still do it, but definitely both are great solutions, and that's the reason why we produce both. But with the Gene, definitely, I think just highlighting the focus point of really who the board's built for is that we built it from an uncompromised kind of perspective. For users that want fundamentally the absolute best micro ATX board you can get, that's really our goal with the Gene series, is that we want to give you a board that whether you're gaming, whether you're overclocking, whether you're focusing at high-end performance, or you're building a different type of usage model, whether it's going to be mobile content creation station, general productivity and gaming, mix of maybe multiple of those all in the same house, the board's going to be a fantastic baseline. But first and foremost, I think I just want to talk about the big aesthetic change that we've made for this generation. I think that right off the bat, compared to the Maximus 6 series, you're going to see that the board has a very different look and feel. It still is uniquely ROG, but we've gone ahead and gone with a much darker, I think, accent color on the board overall, and giving it kind of a more aggressive tone, a little bit more stealthy, but still definitely aligning with the look and feel that you would expect from an ROG motherboard. Now, one of the biggest changes you're going to see is that we don't have the white accent on the board.
Okay.
It's going to essentially just be red and black. We have that matte black PCB, and then we've gone with a new type of heatsink design too that's a little bit more angular in nature. But one of the things that I think is really unique that we want to go ahead and show is going to be a new type of color implementation that we have on the board.
This is which really cool.
Dual color PCB based design. So if we go ahead and put the board here on an angle, you're going to see right there that directly underneath that VRM heatsink you have an entire kind of red section to the board. And this is purely an aesthetic design implementation, but we did this really from the conscious perspective of wanting to show the premium look and feel that ROG boards endeavor. And this was actually a very difficult process to achieve. It's really never been done before. And it required a lot of trial and error because we had to actually go through multiple revisions. As you might know, when you put the board through what's called the SMT process, as it's a very high temperature process, this can actually change the color of the motherboard. And so when we put in red, it would have one initial color and then it would come out another color. So we had to keep going through a trial and error process to get the color accuracy along with the color gradation that we were looking for on the board. In addition, even the thickness of the actual secondary color had to be carefully evaluated so as to not impact our ability to implement the onboard componentry. And what we'll do is a little bit later, we'll go ahead and just remove the heatsink so you can get a little bit closer look and feel to how the board really shows itself off. But I think overall the aesthetic looks amazing for this board.
Very nice, and this definitely seems like this is the first time that ASUS has tried to do something like this or implemented something like this on a production model board, actually having two colors on the PCB itself?
Correct, yes, it's the first time, and it's going to be a hallmark for what you're going to see on our enthusiast class ROG series motherboards. So for our Maximus 7 Hero and for our Maximus 7 Gene, they're both going to feature this dual color PCB design.
Very nice. So apart from that, the aesthetic features, of course, there's some new updates from Z97 chipset, as well as just some new features that you guys have implemented with this board. So we've already talked or had some other videos that you guys can check out on our Newegg TV YouTube channel covering the mainstream series of motherboards from ASUS. Are there any of those that have that are also included on the ROG series, or is this more of a this is definitely in its own class?
No, definitely. I mean, ROG always leverages a huge amount of the design work that we put into the mainstream series and takes upon many of those features and then just evolves them to be able to offer even more advanced functions or features, as well as features that are been uniquely designed and developed for the ROG series of motherboards. So first and foremost, you know, as it being an ASUS board, you're going to get a great board in terms of the general quality, reliability, and stability, as well as the power componentry. When you buy into an ROG board, just like when you buy into any ASUS board, you're getting really great power componentry and power design. So directly underneath this high performance heat pipe assembly that we have here, where we have a sintered heat pipe in between the two VRM heat sinks. Underneath that, we're going to have some very high quality, fully molded, high amperage base inductors. We're using fully integrated IR MOSFET and driver packages, which have very high thermal thresholds, as well as they also have high voltage thresholds, and they have very good thermal efficiency. So overall, you're getting pretty much the cream of the crop when it comes to power components. In addition to that, of course, we've got the 10K Nichicon GT rated capacitors, which you see is also something that we offered on the Pro series as well as on the Deluxe series. But those boards actually got them after they had already been rolled out on ROG series motherboards.
Okay.
So we can see in that regard how sometimes it's a back and forth relationship, where sometimes the mainstream series is playing a little bit of catch up to what the ROG series may offer, and in other situations it may be something gets developed for mainstream that gets pulled over into the ROG series. Now, one of the things that we talked a lot about on the mainstream series is going to be the quality of the fan control functionality.
Okay.
And that's always been actually a focus on ROG series motherboards. As you guys know, ROG boards are really geared first and foremost towards gamers, hardcore enthusiasts, tweakers, tuners, overclockers, and a lot of those guys care about fan control functionality and cooling for their hardware. And so in this respect, all the fan headers that we have on this board are all going to be 4-pin, and they all feature actually the Fan Expert 3 design implementation, meaning that every single one can have 3-pin and 4-pin fan control, but for this generation we've gone ahead and integrated full ability to be able to define the output control signal. Nice. So that can be either DC or PWM. Now, you've got actually a PWM fan splitter cable there next to you.
I do.
So we can show them. Essentially what you'd be able to do is you could go ahead and take this fan splitter and you could attach it to, let's say, one of the corresponding chassis fan headers. So let's say this chassis fan header over here on the board up here. And once you go ahead and connect that, that would allow you to then go ahead and connect maybe 2 or 3 other fans, and they could all receive the same exact control signal that you've defined for the board. So that's essentially giving you the ability that even if the board might, let's say, only have 4, 5, 6 fan headers, right, you could effectively control, you know, 7, 8, 9, 10 fans because you have that ability to output that PWM control signal.
So it's nice to be able to get that control, but also be able to provide your own power, so you're not necessarily overloading one of the fan headers on the board.
That's correct. You just get overall a great deal of flexibility. But in addition to that, for this generation, we've also incorporated the ability to map different temperature inputs to different headers. So you now have the ability to go ahead and route temperatures to different headers in different ways. So traditionally, the CPU op will always run, of course, from the CPU temperature. But let's say that chassis fan header, we could have that now based off of the PCH, or we could have it be based off of the actual VRM, or we could have it be based off an optional temp sensor that you could go ahead and position anywhere, whether it's on the back of the GPU, on top of your SSD, maybe in a certain certain portion of the chassis for ambient temperature monitoring. So you're going to have a whole great deal of flexibility being able to go in there and tweak and tune fan configurations really in an unprecedented way. And when you definitely take a look at the experience you're going to have, unquestionably no other gaming or enthusiast board is going to come close to this level of fan control functionality. And the great thing is that we're mirroring all these advanced functions and features not only from within the operating system environment, of course, within AI Suite 3, but also even within the UEFI. And for this generation, we've incorporated automatic fan tuning, so the actual fan calibration process inside the UEFI along with a graphical fan curve. So really awesome stuff that we have there that is going to be consistent across all the ASUS performance-oriented motherboards.
Very nice.
Now, some of the other things that we have that is, of course, going to be consistent from previous generations is here would be the MPCIe combo connection. So we've had that MPCI combo card. So the combo card will stay for this generation, allowing you to easily go ahead and add an integrated wireless and Bluetooth card if you want to be able to have that functionality on Micro ATX board. Okay. But we've gone ahead and removed the mini PCI Express based connection that the board offered, and instead we've gone ahead and integrated that as part of the storage option that the board will offer with M.2 support. Okay. So this board will offer M.2 support. If we go ahead and take a look here at the bottom portion of the board, we can see in between our two primary PCI Express slots, we have an M.2 based connection. So this is only for M.2 PCIe, not M.2 SATA. Okay. And that's predominantly from the focus is that we wanted to be able to prioritize performance being the way that users would default connect on an ROG series motherboard. As having M.2 co-laid with serial ATA will mean that you'll lose some of your PCH ports. Mm-hmm. We felt that we wanted to prioritize the user being able to keep all their PCH ports active while also running the M.2 PCI based device.
And an M.2 SATA device is really going to operate at just the same speeds as your SATA 6G ports.
Correct. In most situations, it's not really an advantage for the user to run an M.2 SATA-based device versus a normal 2.5-inch SSD, okay, where generally the cost as well as the controller diversity is going to be much more present than it would be for M.2-based devices. Okay, so if anybody is getting this board and wants to make use of that M.2 port, make sure you get a PCIe M.2 SSD, not a SATA. Correct. Okay. And in addition to that, of course, you're going to get 8 serial ATA ports, which is awesome on a Micro ATX board. Mm-hmm. Tons of connectivity there. And the great thing is all those will stay active regardless of how you use that M.2 based implementation. Now, if we take a look at the back I.O., we've got some pretty interesting things to talk about there. So if we go ahead and turn the board around and we just take a look at the connectivity, a lot of it is what you're going to expect, right? You've got, of course, your clear CMOS button. You've got your ROG Connect button, which is still an option that we're going to offer here on the boards, which gives you the ability to, of course, connect to a USB-enabled like notebook, where you can do advanced tweaking, tuning, and monitoring. You can do things like clear your CMOS. You can power down your system. You can restart it. You can log and track temperatures and voltages and fan speed. It's really awesome function. Of course, you got your PS2 port, your combo port, USB 2 ports, HDMI, Toslink optical out, and then we've got 4 USB 3 jacks, and then of course those 4 USB 3 support our USB 3 boost as well as our USB Charger Plus technology to quick charge mobile devices. Okay. And USB 3 boost, of course, give you performance enhancement for high-speed external SSDs as well as different types of USB flash drives. But what's interesting here is this gigabit Ethernet controller. Now, we've done a huge amount of testing and interoperability testing to be able to ensure that what we put on here from a NIC we feel is confident is really the best type of networking solution out there. Mm-hmm. A lot of other competitors are actually looking at different types of solutions like those from Killer. And while the Killer solution is actually a very competent network controller, in our internal analysis we found that the actual UDP performance, especially for game-based packets, are going to be significantly better on the internal network controller. Mm-hmm. And so that's part of the reason why we've maintained this implementation, along with its ability to have significantly more management options at how you tweak and tune it for performance on whether it's general types of usage or network types of usage environments. Now, in addition to that, for this generation, we've entirely re-overhauled a brand new packet priority application. We're still keeping it under the name of what's called Game First, but we've gone ahead and entirely rewritten the entire engine that it's running off of. So in previous generation, we co-worked with a company called CFOS to develop the software package. This time, we actually took our networking engineer and co-worked with our networking division. And so we actually used the advanced QoS technology that they have, so quality of service technology and game prioritization technology that they're developing for routers, and we essentially took that back-end software and integrated that directly into a software package. Okay. So we're still going to give you this really easy-to-use UI that we've custom developed to be able to allow you to prioritize games, of course, downloading, streaming, any type of network model, and it'll automatically do it for you. You don't even have to worry about adding profiles. But that being said, you can always easily and manually go in and prioritize any key application you want. But it's a very easy-to-use program to be able able to get the best networking experience. And also, unlike killer solutions, let's say if you want to use a wireless controller, whether it's going to be one that you pop into the M-Combo card, or whether you use a PCIe or a USB wireless solution, GameFirst is agnostic. It'll work with any network controller, versus the killer solution will only prioritize traffic for just the physical network port.
Would there be any benefit to using this specific implementation in that software along with an ASUS router?
At this point, no, but you never know. As far as us maybe doing some additional fine tuning, that's never off the table, and definitely stay tuned on the networking front, because we're working on some really interesting things on that side. But definitely our goal here was just to ensure that we gave you what we felt is the best class NIC with the best performance and the best management. But that being said, ROG is always about trying to improve the quality and the design of the boards. And the reason why this is a red jack is because it's actually different. We've actually gone back in and internally revised the topology and the composition. So I want to show you guys something pretty cool right here. If we can go ahead and get in tight, what you guys are going to see right here is you're going to see what was previously used on previous, even ASUS series motherboards. This is right here the internal composition of the network controller. Okay. And these right here are these Toriel chokes. These are actually handmade, if you can believe that. They're not actually produced by machines. And so the quality is actually pretty consistent, even though they're handmade, but you can see it looks like it's something that's handmade. Now, if you compare that to this one right here, this is using SMD, so surface-mounted base components. These are far more consistent in terms of their quality, but they also give us significantly more area available to be able to go ahead and add in additional components. Now, what we've done with that additional area is we've gone ahead and put in additional circuitry to be able to protect us against surges and spikes. So you're getting a significantly improved tolerance level for these type of items that can damage your board. Now, if you know, we've actually had long-running design implementations on our motherboards to protect, let's say, your USB ports on your motherboards, but your Ethernet port has been essentially left kind of exposed. So with this type of design implementation, we're able to offer significantly improved performance in terms of protection for you. And this is part of our new initiative, where there's a lot of designs that we've had inherently always on ROG boards, but sometimes don't get talked about because we have so many other features. And so we want just users to know that we have a set of design tenets to really help to give you the best quality of motherboard, ensuring that you have great reliability and stability to your products in the long term. And this falls under our Gamers Guardian initiative, where we have a set of essentially design improvements, whether they're the long life capacitors, whether it's the stainless steel I/O compared to competitors which use carbon plating, whether it's going to be things like our land guard implementation, and a whole lot more, which really speak to improving the overall performance and the quality of the product.
Now, we're just looking at the Maximus 7 Gene for right now, but would this implementation carry over to the other motherboards in the ROG line?
That's correct. So the Maximus 6 Hero will also feature this improved, revised Ethernet-based connection.
Very nice.
So that's rounding out that. Now, another section that's going to be, of course, improved upon is you're going to see this right here. So this is actually the brand new Supreme Effects sound card. Now, this is the same type of sound design implementation that we introduced previously on our Maximus 6 Impact. So our mini ITX-based motherboard, where we gave you a very high-quality audio solution, but instead of having our isolated audio design, we took it even further and we put it on an isolated card. Okay. And of course, on that card, we went ahead and we incorporated high-grade ELNA audio capacitors, which were even higher end than the Nichicon audio capacitors that we use on the channel series. We have an operational amplifier on there. We have shielding. So you're overall getting a really outstanding experience in terms of the quality for audio, right? But we've actually seen that some competitors have copied similar approaches, even though we really set the industry on trend to be able to first develop and design this type of isolated audio design.
It's the height of flattery, though.
But with that, what we've really tried to also look at is realize that there's more that can be done about the total experience. We've always really been adamant that it's not just about the hardware spec, and you should never evaluate a motherboard based on just pure specification. So what we've done for this generation is we looked at how can we improve certain functions and features, and we've done some really awesome things. So first up, what you're going to have actually on this card is going to be an entirely new operational amplifier that internally in our labs we call the 3D amplifier. Okay. So this 3D amplifier is going to give us some really cool functionality that first is going to come in the form of something that we call the Sonic Sense amp. So the Sonic Sense amp is going to be the first time that we're going to be able to automatically detect headphone impedance and manually set it for you. Oh, wow. So traditionally, a lot of gamers may not realize that when they buy a headphone, the headphone is going to maybe be operating at 32 ohm, 64 ohm, maybe 150 ohm, but they might never set it to that correct setting. and therefore they might not get the best actually experience from that headset.
The headphones are just quiet. There must be something wrong with them.
It could be that they're actually, they're quieter. They're not as loud. Maybe they sound a little bit more muffled. It's one of those things that maybe you just think, oh, I just bought this headset and I thought it was going to be a lot better, and maybe it's not as good. It's very similar actually to monitors. Sometimes users buy like 120 hertz, 144 hertz monitors, and they don't realize that they have to manually set the refresh rate, and they don't get the experience from the higher refresh rate. So this is going to be an awesome feature that we'll actually demonstrate, where if you just plug in the headphone, it'll automatically detect the impedance and set it for you, so you have the best experience in a truly plug-and-play fashion. But us being ROG, we didn't just want to stop there. We wanted to even do more.
But wait, there's more.
So in addition to that, what you're actually going to see right here is going to be a little button at the bottom of this board that's called Sonic Soundstage. So let's see if we can maybe pull that out there a little bit, get you a little bit of another shot. So with Sonic Soundstage, we've now given you the ability to actually adjust the hardware register of that operational amplifier on a hardware level. So this is not a DSP algorithm like you would have normally that would be adjusted in the operating system like through presets. We're actually adjusting the way that the register works. And this actually allows us to create an entirely different aural experience for the op-amp. So we can actually change its characteristics of how it sounds on a hardware scale. So this is essentially the same type of process that you would do by changing out the op-amp, which in a lot of situations actually isn't realistic, because what are you going to do once you install this in your chassis? You want to take it all the way out to put in a new op-amp? Probably not. Additionally, it's also very important to understand that op-amps are carefully designed for the entire audio chain. So in many situations, the entire composition of the audio chain is designed for a specific type of op-amp. So you changing it, while it can change the tonality, isn't always going to be the best in terms of ensuring that that's optimally designed for the entire audio path.
Okay.
So the user then now can just go ahead and press this button, and when they press that button, they can change into 4 different presets that we've optimized for different types of game environments. The other cool factor with this being purely hardware-based, and with things like SteamOS starting to take a little bit more traction, guess what? This is entirely free of the operating system environment. So you can leverage this actual sound optimization preset even within a Linux-based environment like SteamOS.
So you don't necessarily need to worry about software support.
Correct.
Okay.
So that's another big advantage. But once again, being ROG, we still weren't happy with that, and we wanted to even do more.
Still more.
So we've actually entirely designed a brand new type of audio suite that we call Sonic Studio.
Okay.
And with Sonic Studio, we actually have gone through and completely rewritten algorithms in place to be able to have really awesome features and functionality at how you can customize and profile your sound experience. Whether it's going to be for things like reverb, whether it's going to be for voice clarity, whether it's going to be for bass response, as well as for virtual surround. And we've spent a huge amount of time to be able to make sure that the virtual surround implementation is something that we feel gamers are going to really confidently want to utilize, as opposed to being something that a lot of times can feel gimmicky or forced. It really does add a spatialization element to it. And depending on maybe how we can cut the video, we might even have a demo video that we can give you guys, so you guys can actually see where we've done audio mixes to be able to show you the difference between Sonic Studio enabled versus Sonic Studio disabled. So it's really great because we're giving you 2 different levels of flexibility. Within the OS environment, you can customize and control Soundstage, which not only from a hardware button is controllable, but like I said, also in the operating system. But you're also, in addition to that, going to have the whole Sonic Studio suite. So when you combine that also together with the Sonic Sense amp, we're really taking, I think, the most complete evaluation of how we can really improve a gamer's experience when it comes to audio, by giving them not only better quality hardware-based design, but a better experience in how they utilize it. So some really awesome functionality, I think, that we've done on the audio side.
Excellent. I know sound is definitely close to the top when it comes to gamers' lists of important things when they're actually setting up their gaming. Graphics is probably right up there with them, but ASUS, of course, has a ton of options in that space.
Definitely. And I mean, for us, you know, that's something that we've taken a huge amount of pride and effort in to really be able to give a great experience, and not just for gaming. I mean, myself, even when I'm on my gaming system, I listen to music and I watch movies as well. So, you know, we have optimized presets that also exist for those environments, and something that we've also incorporated into the brand new audio manager to top that all off is going to even be importing and exporting function. So if gamers want to be able to share profiles for their actual audio sequencing for different types of games or different types of positional accuracy or things like that, they'll be able to share different profiles with each other and import them and export them through the actual entire audio suite that we have in place. And we still also have gone and further improved upon Sonic Radar from the previous generation implementations, where for this generation we have per game profiling available. So now users, if they want to have different types of profiles, whether it's going to be a Sonic Radar profile for Battlefield 4 and then another for Team Fortress and then another for Counter-Strike, you can have different profiles mapped for different games, so that you don't have to go ahead and reset profiles dynamically every time you go into a new game.
Okay. I thought for a second you were going to say you had integrated an aimbot now as well, but that probably take a step too far.
But that's actually a really good point that you bring the word bot into ROG.
I was setting up a transition.
And we've actually introduced an entirely new function that we call keybot on ROG series motherboards. So a lot of you guys actually really love your mechanical keyboards or your keyboards, right? And what we've kind of thought about is, well, how can we maybe help to improve the experience for gamers with their keyboards as well as enthusiasts? And the way that we thought about is what happens if we can add more functions and features to your keyboard, but without you having to change it. And so what we went ahead and did is we implemented the keybot microcontroller. So if you take a look at this board, you're going to see a little chip here on the back of the motherboard. And that's this guy right here. This is a keybot microcontroller processor. So this processor will actually directly interface and work with your keyboard on a hardware level. And how this works is if we go back to the motherboard and you look on the board, there's going to be a button. So let's see if you can see it right here. There's a keybot button.
Okay.
And when you press the keybot button, it will then, when the keyboard is plugged into the corresponding port, route into that microcontroller, and now we have hardware level interaction that we can work with that keyboard. And we can do things such as we can one-touch enable your system to boot straight into the UEFI. You don't even need the direct key button. You can just boot straight into your UEFI. If you want to be able to have a single button to enable XMP, you can automatically enable XMP. You want to be able to hardware automatically enable CPU level up to one-touch overclock your system, you can do that. If you want to be able to set up automatic logging into your operating system for your username and your password, we can also do that. If you want to have custom macro keys, you want custom function keys and custom shortcut keys, that's all assignable. So we can start to introduce some really advanced functions and features all on a hardware scale. And in the event that you need those function keys and they may be already mapped in a different application or game, within the operating system you can dynamically turn off and on the keybot function.
So you can map all of those functions to like keys on your keyboard?
Correct.
Can you do multiple, like, you know?
Yes.
Like I don't necessarily want one-touch overclocking every time I hit the A button or something.
Yes.
Like you could.
Well, by default, they're already mapped to specific functions, but you can go in and program pretty much at your heart's content. You can go into the actual UI, and there are different functions, as I said, for shortcuts, for macro keys, for function keys, and you could map them accordingly.
Wow.
And the great thing is because since we actually control the firmware cycle as well as the software cycle from it, as we get more and more feedback from you guys, we can continue to customize this, where you can imagine where you can even have profile packs for, let's say, different games, different applications, and we could have those automatically exist on a hardware level.
And you would configure those via a software application from within the operating system?
Correct.
Okay.
And then once stored in there, they all exist on a hardware level directly with your keyboard. So some really awesome functionality. Once again, is showing the commitment that ROG has at being able to bring premier hardware-based designs into their motherboards.
Very nice.
So in addition to that, we've also got some other improvements that we've made on the board as a whole. So outside, of course, the fan expert fan controls that we've already noted, we continue to also offer a really rich ecosystem of device support. So we have an ROG EXT header that's on the motherboard. So some of you guys might be familiar with, of course, this little guy here on the table, which is going to be the OC panel. And so the OC panel is fully compatible with the Maximus 7 Gene as well as with the Maximus 7 Hero. So this is going to give you the ability to, of course, have one-touch overclocking. You can, of course, fold it down, or you can do like that, and you can put it in a 5 1/4 bay, and you could, of course, have your temperatures and your fan speeds and time all reported out to you, and you have all that great usability. That's entirely pin compatible. But in addition to that, if we just maybe move over here to the front tower chassis that I've got here, where I have a system up and running, you'll see at the top here I've got our ROG front base.
Okay.
So the ROG front base is also a similar unit, but it has the big advantage that it features actually a specially designed shielded audio cable that will directly plug into the front audio connection.
Okay.
And the reason why that's important is, of course, as you guys probably know, the cable quality sometimes within a chassis is fairly poor, and sometimes it can be impacted and it can cause degradation to the actual sound experience.
Yes, I've for the most part given up using front panel audio on most of the cases. I actually have the Zonar Phoebus right now, so I just use a little breakout box.
That's actually part of the reason why we developed the breakout box on the Phoebus, is to bypass essentially those limitations. But with this, if we are spending all this effort to be able to give you an improved sound quality experience, this is why we're taking a look at the entire ecosystem of the type of product products that you need to be able to have the absolute best experience, not only for your headset or your headphones, but also even for the microphone experience as well. So this helps to ensure that we're giving you the best experience possible, plus while giving you some really awesome information such as temperatures. You can control fan speeds, you can adjust the volume, and you can do a whole lot more. So in that respect, you get a huge degree of functionality with that when paired up with the hardware designs that we have on the Gene series.
Very nice.
Now, wrapping things out, if we take a look at of course the rest of the connections, you pretty much got everything that you would come to expect on the board. You know, whether it's going to be debug LED, voltage read points, on board, you know, power and reset buttons, clear CMOS buttons, of course, you know, the MEMOK button, and a lot more is all going to be on here. So really, when you take a look at this board from the perspective, if you're trying to have a premier enthusiast, you know, overclocking and gaming motherboard, you're pretty much going to have everything that you could want on this board. Now, the last part is, I think you've got some little accessories that we have over there.
Yes.
With not only our Qi wireless charging station, which will of course allow you to take advantage of wireless charging for, let's say, a tablet or for a smartphone. Next to it, we have the NFC Express Box, which is an awesome little accessory which will allow you guys to go ahead and use NFC-enabled devices to either log into your system, go ahead and quick launch multiple applications. You'll be able to wirelessly transfer photos, be able to wirelessly stream videos from your mobile device to your desktop, and even be able to stream Bluetooth audio from a mobile device also to your desktop speakers. So really awesome level of functionality there. And of course, for users that are interested in having Thunderbolt, the fastest I/O standard available, then they can also add it via the Thunderbolt EX2 card. So a huge degree of flexibility and functionality. When you tie that into, of course, to the software suite that the board comes along with, which includes still a 1-year full license version of Kaspersky Antivirus, a full licensed version of Damon Tools Pro Standard, and then of course our full ROG RAM disk software, you can begin to see that the value-add experience that you have on the ROG board, notwithstanding all the hardware innovations that we have on here, is really top-notch for any enthusiast and gamer.
And the funny thing about all this is that I know we're actually cutting this short, and JJ could probably talk for a good another 20 minutes about this motherboard, but that is, we're going to wrap it up for now, unless you have any closing remarks, JJ?
I think that's it. Like I said, you know, there's definitely always a lot more to ROG boards than what we can cover, but I think that this gives you an idea of just all the boards packing in.
Excellent. So this has been the Maximus 7 Gene Micro ATX motherboard with the Z97 chipset, 1150 socket, again for Intel 4th generation core processors, Haswell Refresh, as well as fully compatible with upcoming Devil's Canyon. JJ, thank you so much for stopping by today and sharing all of this information with us.
Thank you for having me.
And thanks to you guys for watching. If you would be so kind, leave us a comment in the comment section down below. Don't forget to give us a thumbs up while you're down there on the video, and we'll see you next time.